Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 381 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron. I am so thrilled that you are here with me today as I am talking to Jennifer Herrera. We're soul sisters now, hoop earring sisters. We talk about making writing the number one priority. We talk about starting with the opening image, which was honestly very eye-opening for me and made me think about some things that I have been failing to do and why they are so important. So I know that you are going to you're going to interview this enjoy. You're going to enjoy this interview. This is the fourth early intro that I have done, and it is starting to show. I am probably not still on the road by the time this goes live. I am home in New Zealand, and I hope that I am relaxed. I will have just gotten home the day before. I hope that I am not too stressed out. I hope that I am not ill. I hope that I did not overpressure myself by trying to do too many things with too many people. I hope that I'm coming back and I'm feeling like, yes, that was exactly right. I got to hang out with my lovies exactly the right amount. I got to chill out and read a book at exactly the right time. I am hopeful for all of those things. I'm hoping that as I am approaching the desk on the other side of this trip, that I can look out my window and that those broccoli that have been growing through the winter here have started to shoot up into stalks. I have to say that growing green stuff in the winter here is awesome. I've got kale and spinach and some silver beet just going gangbusters, and I'm looking at them as I record this. So I hope that when I get home, I have a really big salad made with the stuff that I have grown. And I hope that I have managed to get a little bit of writing done while I've been gone, but I will also give myself a lot of grace because traveling is exhausting. Family, no matter how much we love them, can be exhausting. So I am welcoming myself back home by dropping this interview for you to listen to, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for being here. Let's talk a little bit about Jennifer here. Jennifer Herrera is a former philosophy grad student turned literary agent who is fascinated by the stories we tell ourselves to live and the lies we cling to that sabotage our chances at a good life. She was born and raised in Northwest Ohio and now resides in Philadelphia with her husband, daughter, and cat. The Hunter is her most recent novel. All right, here we go. Enjoy, please, and happy writing to you, my friends. Well, I am so pleased to welcome you to the show today. May I ask for your name and your pronouns, please?
Yes, my name is Jenny Herrera, or Jennifer, if you want to be formal about it. And she, her.
Thank you. I'm going to call you Jenny because we've already bonded over the fact that we're wearing basically the exact same hoop earrings, and we have decided that we just don't feel right without them.
Mm-mm.
Like
No.
it's a thing. And I don't know if
Mhm.
I'm stuck in the past or if I'm very future forward, but it doesn't matter because
You're
we look good.
timeless. You're
Timeless.
timeless.
It's like that and a red lip, which I don't have right now, but like these earrings and a red lip, and you
Oh,
can
you're
go
reminding me. Okay,
anywhere.
we're just gonna. Is that unprofessional? Is
No,
this?
it's delightful. That's a good color.
Thank you.
Okay, people are going to have to go to the
There you
YouTube.
go. Merit.
Oh,
Merit is the brand. What's the color?
nice.
Marrakesh.
And I could just
Merit
like reach
Marrakesh.
for mine right
You
here.
should do
Yes.
it. You should do
Desk gloss.
it.
Yeah. All right. This is taking a very good turn.
That is a
Yes.
beautiful color. That looks great on you.
And my eyes can't even see what it is, and I don't remember, but I could figure it out. All right, let's jump into writing. Oh my gosh, this was already so fun. Okay, so you wrote this incredible thriller that I super enjoyed called The Hunter. And as I was doing my bare due diligence on you, is this your debut?
Yeah.
Oh, excited. That's what I thought. But then I was like, oh no. And she's gonna say, like, oh, okay, that and the 17 others I've written. You are also a literary agent. Well, this wasn't on the list of questions that I sent to you, but like, how do you balance that? How do you balance writing with the work that is coming in? Like
Uh,
that's hard.
I know it's really hard. But I am a literary agent for nonfiction. And that is
Okay.
the secret to my success. I don't know how
Yes.
people do it there are authors who are fiction authors and fiction agents. That to me would get very confusing because I
Mhm.
think I would think every client's book is my book and
Yeah,
try to rewrite it in the way that
totally.
I write.
Totally.
Um, so I can't do that. So I do nonfiction, and I love doing nonfiction because it means I'm always learning about new ideas. I'm learning about new ways of seeing the world. And then I get to take what I learn and put it in my books.
Oh, that is awesome. And also you just had this enormous advantage probably, or it could be a disadvantage of really understanding the publishing industry before you got into it. What do you think, like,
Oof.
what do you think helped you knowing about the publishing industry and what maybe has felt a little weird?
Okay. So helped me. Certainly, I knew the players.
Yeah.
I knew the imprints of the houses. So I
Mhm.
knew which places had good reputations
Yeah.
and which ones didn't. And I think that is extremely important because you don't want to end up at a house that's going to fold.
Mhm.
You don't want to end up at an imprint that's known for just doing a really poor job with their books, where they don't edit them, they don't promote them. And so I knew that Putnam, where I ended up, was like, it was my top choice. And so I had that, like, I knew if I got Putnam, then I was gold.
Putnam
Um,
is part of Penguin Random House. Is that right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. I think it's actually the oldest imprint at Penguin
Yeah.
Random House.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, so I'm obsessed with them. They do amazing books, and they do just a really good job with their books. Sally Kim runs it. She's phenomenal. She actually discovered Gillian Flynn.
Wow.
Didn't, I don't think she's still there. I think Gillian moved to a different imprint, but she
Yeah.
like discovered like all of these incredible voices. So
Wow.
huge, huge fan of hers. And what hurts me being an agent is all the rest.
So that was the
uh
pro, and
that
what
was the pro.
that was the
And then the
pro.
rest are
What
just
are
cons.
what are a couple
Well,
of the cons? I'm just so curious.
yeah. Uh I know what good sales look like. I know
Mhm.
what good distribution looks like. I know all of like the highest bars you can possibly hit because I've seen, I've worked with authors who sold millions of copies. And so it's like I think there's this constant comparison, even though I don't
Yeah.
work with fiction at all. I'm like constantly comparing myself to the best of the best and being like, if
That would
I
be
don't get
horrible.
there, it's horrible. I hate it. I hate this about myself. Can your wife please get on the call and like
And
talk me through this?
you know what she would say? I can even hear it in her voice. She would
Yeah.
say, "You are not your job. That's not who I know it's so good. It's so annoying when she says that, but she's always right. You're not your job. You are you, Jenny, but also as a
Mm,
writer and as a literary
mm,
agent. Wow, that's a lot to
yeah.
balance.
Wow. I am me. I am not my job. She's right. She's wow. Very, very brilliant woman. So I think that's like the tricky part. But on the bright side, I know that even if you sell millions and millions of copies, most of these authors, like, it's not enough. They're not like, oh, I've reached the pinnacle. I can just like coast now. Nobody
Mhm.
says that. And then just the pressure builds because then the next one has to do that well. And the next one. So I know what a trap it is. And that I think is really, really wonderful because I can fall into this like ugly headspace of, oh, how many millions of copies have you sold? And then
Yeah.
immediately retract and be like, wait a second, even if you got to that place, it
Yeah.
wouldn't make you happy. And so it's really forcing myself to return to that like inner voice and that inner self that says, did you say something worthwhile? And did you let people escape for a little while? If you did those two things,
Mm.
then like just chill, just chill.
That is beautiful. I was literally walking along the sidewalk, I think yesterday, the day before, thinking about how I want more. And then I thought,
Mm,
I will never have enough.
yeah.
Therefore, chill. Just chill.
Mhm.
You have enough. I will never, reach that point that you talked about. Like when I have finally sold
Mhm.
the right amount of books and I can coast for the rest of my life. I will never
Yeah.
get there. So I don't have to worry about ever getting there. It just relief.
Mhm.
But also
Mhm.
writers in particular, I think we are just born dreamers. We're born hopers, and we always
Yeah.
hope that this book or the next book is going to be the one that hits so big. So then
Uh-huh.
how do you balance your time around getting your writing done and then getting the work that is reading and editing and doing all the minutia of the job? How do you balance all that?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, and this is actually, because you had maybe given me a heads up on some questions that would be asked. And one of them was like, what's the kindest thing that you've
Yeah.
done for your writing, or something along those lines?
Yeah.
And I think it's that I work on my writing first thing in the morning every day. It's the first thing. It's number one priority, like outside of my family. It's the number one priority for me every single day.
Mm.
Hopefully my clients aren't listening to this.
It
But
makes you a better agent
yeah,
to do that.
and
Makes
actually,
you a better human.
my clients know this too. It's
Yeah.
like we've talked about this at length. And
And they're
they,
writers. They understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And they're like, good for you. I'm glad that you like can do it.
Mm.
I think it, if I make that time for myself every day and I make it my biggest priority, it's like laundry will get done, dishes will
Mhm.
get done. Clients' manuscripts will go on submission. All of those things are not things that I will ever fall behind on. Like I'll find a way, but I won't, unless I prioritize writing, I won't ever do it. Because it's too hard. It's too
Yes.
hard.
That's the truth of writing. We won't do it because it's too hard if we don't prioritize it. Period. Everything else is
Right.
easier.
Yes. Everything else is easier. Yes. Wow, this is deep.
This is yeah, no, super deep. Okay, so I love that you prioritize. I love that you do it first. What is your biggest challenge when it comes to doing your writing or to writing
Oof.
in general?
Yes, I think that especially, so with my clients, I get to work on proposals. Everything is nonfiction. It sells based on a proposal that's 50 to 80 pages. And it's in their heads. They hold on to that 50 to 80 pages. And I get to read it and make comments and whatever, but I never have to hold all the pieces in my head. So I think of like, there's probably some beautiful image of like some magician show somewhere where somebody's trying to like, I feel like actually I know this from some magician show somewhere, probably The Witcher, because that's the only thing that I would think that I would watch enough times to have this image. But something where like they're trying to hold up this whole world.
Yeah.
And they're trying to keep all of the pieces together and to keep all of the people in the right places and all of the buildings in the right places. And they have to concentrate so hard to keep that world, within their grasp. And that I think is the hardest place, because unless I get like a lot of dedicated time, I have to go throughout the rest of my day. Like I need to
Mhm.
take care of my kids. I need to like be with, my family. I have to do my job. I have to freaking sweep leaves outside on my steps. I have to sweep the leaves up. So like there are all of these other things that happen, and it's so hard to be doing all of those things and to be holding this world within like my mental space. And
Mhm.
that I think is the trickiest part. But it's also one of the parts that so long as I chill, going back to what you said before, I know that I can always go back to the beginning, and I can always, take really good notes on that whole world, and I can build it up in my mind again until it takes less work every time I try
Yeah.
to hold it up.
I love the way that you say that. And the thing about holding that world up is we are the only ones who are doing it for the majority of the time of the book. At some point we'll all have editors, and if we're publishing, like they will help with
Yeah.
some of that, but otherwise it's
Mm.
just us. And I feel like that is almost why I feel so fond of the books that I have written. I will
Mm.
probably never read them again. I don't want to, but I'm fond of them because that world is being held up by the pages that it is in. I don't have to worry
Mm.
about it anymore. I can't
And by
change it.
other people's brains.
Yeah, but oh, yes. Yeah.
Other people are holding up the world.
Okay, we're
Oh, I
getting
love that.
really
So
very, very deep in this conversation, very metaphysical and
that is also
esoteric.
my
I love it.
personality. I guess
And
is not that
you're
shocking if
oh,
you've
you're
read my
bringing
book.
it out. That's awesome. You're bringing it out of me. It's beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Other people are holding up our books, and we can finally let them go out into the world. Ooh, gorgeous. What is your biggest joy when it comes to writing?
That.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that truly is a huge joy. Um, but something that maybe was unexpected and that is part of the writing process itself and not the product, is all of the cool things that your subconscious can do while you're writing.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I think about a lot is this class I took as an undergraduate. It was a philosophy of mind class where we were talking about people with blind spots. So they have a place of their vision that they're totally blind. And so researchers would hold up an object in this blind spot and they would say, "What am I holding up?" And the subject was like, "Come on, I told you I can't see in that spot." And they would say, "Well, reach your hand out and grab it." And when the researchers were holding out cups, the subjects would hold their hands out in the shape of a cup. When they were holding balls, the subjects would hold their hands in the shape of a ball. So the takeaway here is that there are things that our brains know that we're not conscious of.
Yeah.
And that I think is so much of what writing is. It's like bringing out the pieces of human experience that our brains know that we're not conscious of. And I think a lot of times that works its way out into the world as intuition. That's
Mhm.
how we think of intuition. And so for me, that's the most exciting part about writing is when I find out, like I find a connection. I say, "Oh, that's why he was doing that thing." Because, because I realized that like it's there. It's hidden in
Yeah.
the framework of the story. So in The Hunter, for instance, there's this character who calls the main character, Lee O'Donnell. He calls her Wildcat. I didn't know why I picked this name. I thought it was just like a silly name to throw out. Whatever. He has a nickname for her because he thinks it's cute. He's one of those guys. And then I started listening to the audiobook because apparently I wanted to torture myself and
I
like
guess.
but I realized when the narrator said Lee O'Donnell, she would say Lee O'Donnell, like Leo Donnell. And I went,
Oh.
"Oh, that's why he calls her Wildcat."
Oh my God, I love that. And it is such an amazing thing to be able to rely on that. The intuition will just keep feeding us if we don't trip on it too
Yeah.
hard. Like we just keep showing
And
up,
if
we just keep
yeah,
writing.
and we don't keep trying to outsmart it. We
Yeah.
don't keep saying, "Oh, I'm going to plan all of the pieces together because my ego, my conscious self
Hmm.
knows what's best. I'm going to,
Hmm.
my ego is going to craft this gorgeous plot. It's all going to come together." And it's like, no, just chill. Like your intuition is handling it. Your intuition has got it covered. And if you just wait and you're patient and you do the work and you sit down, it will come out. Like the patterns your brain is trying to get across will come out.
I will only mess it up when I go into my control freak panic phase and try to make
Uh-huh.
everything happen. Yeah. And just
Uh-huh.
like the rest of my life, like when I step back and allow what is supposed to happen, that's when it goes right. That's when it all goes right. We can call that
Yes.
intuition, we can call that the
Yes.
muse, we can call that God, we can call it anything,
Mm-hmm.
but what it is that is our beautiful brains doing what they're gonna brain on, and it comes together. This is gorgeous. Okay, so you
Yeah.
did
And the
say, yeah,
environment
go on.
too, how we like interact with our environment.
Yes.
It's like it's not just us. Anyway,
And
yes,
no,
you were
and the
saying.
synchronicity that arises when we're out in the world, and when we are, I'm always talking about this with my students too, when we're constantly in the work, the entire world around us feeds us exactly what we need to be fed. And we can say, I can't
Yeah.
believe that I heard that lyric. And that's exactly what I needed to unlock that. No, I can believe it. Your brain was open. You keep going back to this place. And therefore the rest of the world is going to fill all of the
Uh-huh.
gaps that you don't even know that they're gaps yet, but they're going to be filled.
It's so hard to like relinquish control like that,
Oh yeah.
especially with a deadline. I would just
Yeah.
like to point out for
Yeah.
anyone listening who thinks we're like off our rockers, um, maybe we are,
This is
but also,
aspirational for me because I would like to
yes,
control the
that's
bands
how
of
I feel.
gravity. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It's like I don't talk about how to plot better because like, if plotting, like if that were all it was, like I could just jam it out in a session, drink like a,
Yeah.
quadruple espresso and just be done
Yeah.
with it. But
Hmm.
that's not, I don't think that's how it works. And so, right, as you said, it's aspirational for me as well.
So you spoke of the kindest thing that you've done for yourself. What is the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you in your writing career?
Ah, I love this question and I love this focus on kindness. Because it feels like it feeds the right part of my brain, which is to like
Mhm.
to be thinking about the ways in which like this community nourishes itself. And I think the kindest thing anyone ever did was take me seriously. I
Oh,
think that, like I grew up, I know you're from the States. I grew up in Ohio in this really rural area. I, you know, most people didn't go to college, let alone like write books or, I didn't even realize that people wrote books. That sounds dumb, but I
no, I had
didn't
that
even
moment.
realize, right? I
I
was like,
remember
oh,
realizing that
like,
somebody had a job to write the books that I read, and it blew my mind. Yeah.
because it's like you just kind of accept it as the fabric of the
Yeah.
world because you've never written a write or like
Right.
a book. So it's like, somebody there's something to do taxes, and then there's this. Like who knew? So I think that I would have been really easy to sort of brush off and to say, this person, doesn't know what she's talking about. She's never taking a writing class. She doesn't, have the chops. And people were just nice to me. And I think that mattered because as soon as they started taking me seriously, I started taking myself seriously and to say,
Mhm.
no, I can do this. And maybe it will take 10 years and countless, drafts of everything to figure out who I am and what I want to write and what my voice is. But like, I'll get there.
I love that. And it makes me want to double down on taking other writers seriously too, which is something that I do, but
I was
that
going to
is
say, I
such
have
a
a
it's
feeling you're
such
very good at
I,
this.
but it is such a gift to give people because all it takes is the one person not believing in you that can break a writer's spirit for 30 years.
I
You
know. And
know.
it's like you need 10 people believing in you or
Yeah.
whatever to like make up for
Yes.
that one person. So it's like by
Yeah.
your giving faith to other people, like you're making up for whoever that one person is that told them
I
they
love
can't do it.
I love that. I just read about the negativity bias that
Mm,
people believe something negative said about them. For some reason, I remember the numbers 2.5 to 4 times more strongly than they will believe
yeah.
a positive. So we really have
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
counteract that.
Hmm.
Gorgeous.
Hmm.
Can you share a craft tip of any sort with us?
Yes. Let's see. Oh, yes. I actually took like quick notes because I knew I would get so excited about what we were talking about that I would forget what answers I had thought about. So I just,
I do that too.
very slyly glanced down at my notes. I think, because I've listened to your podcast and I know a lot of people have really great advice. So I didn't want to repeat anything they said. Um, and I think the biggest piece of advice that I have for the sorts of books that I write and for a lot of books is remembering to start your chapters or your scenes with an image. That
Ooh.
they're this idea of like an opening image, because so much of how we have been taught to consume art is through film and TV. And film
Mm.
and TV always starts with an opening image. You can't like it's very rare to have a blank screen and to have a voiceover.
Hmm.
Right, and that's not really engaging. Like, I remember, like, videos or movies when that happened, and I'm just kinda, like, looking around like,
Where
"What
am I?
what's
Yeah. What
who's
is going on?
talking? What's" Yeah, exactly, it's a little disorienting. So remembering that your reader needs to be grounded in a place and time to feel like they can start to experience that and they can start to, like, live in that world. And again, this is coming from somebody who writes a certain type of book. My books really try to keep the reader in the moment. I try not to talk about the characters very much because I
Hmm.
think, again, that's not, I think it's distancing for us. It shows us how to intellectualize
Hmm.
our experiences. And that, like I think you had said actually that you had read Educated, right? Am I making this up? And you
Hmm.
felt like there was a distance
Yeah. Yeah.
between you and the author's experience, and it's like you want to close that gap, especially if you want to give readers some sort of emotional resonance. And I think that the reason people read fiction and not anything else, not nonfiction, not newspapers, is because they want to feel a certain way about a book. And so just constantly reminding yourself that your job is to make them feel. And so what can you do to help them do that better? How can you close that gap? And one of it, I think, is just creating a very immersive experience. So they're like all in.
I'm literally writing notes to myself from what you're saying. I just started re-revising a memoir this morning that I need to get in proposal shape for my agent. So she needs those, 50 to 80 pages. And
Mhm.
I've been frustrated by the very first part of the first scene. And I realized there's no image there. And
Yeah.
boosh, everything just
Yeah. Yeah.
everything
I will
just
say I use
deepens.
these tips for my nonfiction clients too,
Do you?
reminding them that nobody wants to hear you talk about, not you personally,
Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
anyone kind of talk about their experiences. That's how we process our
Mhm.
experiences. That is the thing that we do to make sense of our world. But that is not something that is organic to the experience itself. So you are, if you're talking about your experiences versus like giving them to the reader and showing them the image and the place and the time, you are already giving them the emotional distance that you have as
Mhm.
somebody writing about that world.
That is so smart. Thank you. Thank you. Like from a very, very selfish perspective. Thank you. Um, what this might be hard for a literary agent to answer, but what is the best book you've read recently and why did you love it?
And this is hard for me to answer, in part because I read a lot, and I keep thinking, like, what is meaningful to me? Like, I read a lot, I will put a book down and then not think about it for the next 4 weeks. So I didn't want to
Mhm.
say something that was like that. So actually, I'm going to talk about an old book. I have my
Oh,
copy
good.
here. um,
Oh,
Women Who Run
Run with
with
the
the
Wolves.
Wolves.
Yes.
It's very old. Well, I think it's from the 90s.
Yeah.
But you'll see there are all of these like bookmarks. So
I don't think I've ever read it, honestly. When I worked in a little bookstore, I sold 100 billion copies of it, but I've never read it.
it's so good. It's so good. So one of the things that I really gleaned from this is that women's stories, and this is like, whatever you think of as like womanly attributes, it's not meant to be like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Gendered.
Divisional. Yeah,
Yeah.
gendered.
Yeah.
Um, is the sense of like, we don't have a hero's journey.
Mm.
That's not the structure of all experiences.
Mhm.
That's a very like male ejaculatory structure.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but so talking about what are some
It's called the
structures of,
climax for a reason.
yes,
you
yes,
know.
but like women's bodies work in cycles.
Yeah.
And like there can be many climaxes, not to get too graphic.
Exactly. The more
So
the
sorry.
better.
So sorry. Clearly my inhibitions have just dwindled. Um so like women's stories can work in these cycles. And so it's like, what are some of the cycles of like how we structure women's stories? And so the author looks at a lot of fairy tales and a lot of stories from around the world from women she's met, from old wives' tales, things like that. So it's like, what is that wisdom that's being passed down with those stories, and how can you elevate them and take them seriously and figure out what is going on? Like, what is the wisdom that's being passed down in these stories?
Mm.
So when I get stuck with a book, I'll just open, because it's very episodic. You don't have to read it from
Mhm.
front to end. Is looking at one of the stories she dissects and saying, what does this mean? And actually, when I wrote The Hunter, that's actually the structure for that book is actually one of the stories that I read about in
I love
Women Who Run with
that.
the Wolves. The structure is about a woman with silver hands. So she, this, as the story goes, her father makes a deal with the devil and she loses her hands as a result. And the whole story is about how she learns to grow back her own hands. And it has all these stages that she goes through. So it's about, feeling helpless and learning to be yourself again, and to be able to use your hands and all of the weight that we
Mm.
ascribe to that metaphor. Anyway, so there are all of these stories like this in this book. And so I wanted to talk to your readers or your listeners about this book that is meaningful to me and continues to be meaningful to me, and that I probably read a little bit of every day.
I am going to pick up a copy and I am going to utilize that method of dipping in and out of it. I think that is so beautiful and so helpful. And I had not thought of that book in yonks. I have not thought about that in
I feel
forever.
like would love it too, because it's all based on like Jungian psychology. That's what she
Yeah.
is. She's a psychologist.
Yeah.
And so it's like taking us through these, like, what are these rites of passages that women are having throughout the cycles of their lives, and
Mhm.
what stories speak to that, and in what ways can we learn more about ourselves by understanding the metaphors in these stories.
You are incredibly inspiring. I really like talking to you.
I
Can you
really like
please
talking to
tell?
you.
Oh, thanks. Can you please tell us about your book, The Hunter?
Yes, yes. So the Hunter, I also brought a copy to hold up
Such
just
a
in
good
case, because
cover.
I love the cover so
Yeah.
much. The Hunter takes us through the story of a detective. Her name is Leo O'Donnell. Leo, like the cat,
Leo.
apparently. Who makes a really big mistake. She points her sidearm at her partner and she lets the suspect get away. And when she does this, it blows up her whole life. And then she gets a call from her brother who says, there are these three suspicious deaths. Can she come back and investigate to her hometown in Ohio? And she gets it in her head that if she solves this case, like, she'll get her job back with the NYPD, which she's lost. Her husband will come back to her because he's left her. And this crumbling life she's had will just suddenly reconstitute itself. But of course, it's not so easy. When she goes back home, she has to deal with a lot of stuff she's been avoiding for a very long time. But it turns out when she starts to deal with some of this stuff, she gains insight into this big case that she's trying to solve. And she also gains insight into why she made that really big mistake. So that, the reader gets the sense of, not only is she working to uncover something about the world, but she's working to uncover something about herself. And for me, like, all the best books, not that like my book is one of the best books, I'm just saying, like, all the best
Mhm.
books to me do that. It's like they relate the external struggles, the internal
Yeah.
struggles. So you read it and you think, maybe I know myself a little better,
As she is growing her hands back
as
through
she's
the book.
growing her hands back. Yeah. And like, you know, when she gets her hands cut off, for me, the metaphor for that was like loses her badge, like loses her gold
Yes.
shield. And
Yes.
how does she come to like be in a place where she can be that person again?
Well done. Well done. The book is beautiful. Your writing
Oh,
is
thank you.
lyrical and also compelling and arresting and just all of the things. I've really enjoyed it. And
Oh,
people
oh,
should go
thank
read The
you.
Hunter. Where can they find you out there online?
Oh, they can find me at because I'm formal on my website, jenniferherrerabooks.com. It's spelled Herrera, Jennifer, like, I guess standard spelling. And I'm also on Instagram. You can also type Jennifer Herrera literary agent and it'll, take you to all the things.
Ooh,
But in
I should
general, yeah.
also
Yeah.
ask for listeners who are writing nonfiction, are you accepting
Mhm.
queries and what are you looking for? I would be
Oof,
remiss.
great question. I accept queries. The problem is I don't tend to respond to queries that I get in my inbox because I get a lot of them and it's really hard to respond to everybody. And so I feel really guilty that that is not something I do.
I think
But
it's an
if you have a
accepted practice
listener,
though. If
I
you don't hear
hope
back now, I
so.
always tell people if you haven't heard back in 6 weeks, that's a no. Let's just put it a
Yeah,
no in your
I think I
column.
feel bad because I like want people to have that closure, but like I don't have the bandwidth to give that
Yeah.
closure. And so
Yeah.
it's like the struggle of like, do I close my inbox or do I just, force people to make that inference? And sadly, I
Yeah.
force people to make that inference. But I will say if somebody says, they heard about me on this podcast and they say it in the subject line, I'm happy to make sure that I respond. So happy to do that for your listeners.
You might regret that. I hope you don't.
I hope I don't. I'm sure I won't.
I
I'm
think
sure I
most
won't.
people who listen are doing fiction and memoir, so not
Right.
typically your standard nonfiction. Yeah.
And I do some memoir, but memoir can be really tricky. So
Hmm.
I don't do a ton of it. But in general,
Yeah.
I just love anything that sparks something in me. Like I love going deep. I love being happy. I love
Yeah.
figuring out how about the world and about our lives. And so it's like whatever gets us there, I want to read and I want to sell.
That's awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was fantastic.
I had such a great time. Thank you for having me.